call the E&F Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Uranga, can you hear me? Sorry, thank you. Vice Chair Mungo?
Here.
Chair Richardson?
I am here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's hear item number 1, please.
Item number 1 is a recommendation to approve the minutes of the Economic Development and Finance Committee meeting held Tuesday, May 1st, 2018.
All right, so we'll entertain a motion in a second. Anybody? Okay. Is there any public comment on the minutes? Seeing none, members, please cast your vote.
Sorry. Hold on, sorry. Give me a second. My apologies.
There it is. Great.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, number 2, please.
Item 2 is a recommendation to receive and file a status update on the implementation of the City of Long Beach's Economic Development Blueprint.
Great. Mr. Keisler, take us away.
Honorable Chair and members of the committee, we're super excited about the update to the blueprint. This is something that the council actually adopted as part of the Economic Development Blueprint in 2017, that each year we would provide the public an update as to how we're doing on the various initiatives, goals, and objectives that are laid out in the strategic plan. So the first opportunity for the public is to join us for the Long Beach Regional Economic Forum. That is actually coming up next week. That will be at the Long Beach Convention Center from about 8 o'clock to 11:30 a.m. This is a partnership with Cal State Long Beach, the economics program, to actually do a economic forecast, talk about the local, regional, and domestic economy, as well as hear some fantastic speakers on the local real estate development environment. We'll be doing a very short, about 15-minute update on the blueprint during that morning event. Members of the public, if they're not able to afford a ticket to the breakfast, we have a number of seats. They can contact the Economic Development Department, and we can get them plugged in. Some of our sponsors have even donated tables so that the public can join for free. The second great opportunity will be in this council chambers in just about 2 weeks. This will be April 30th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. The Economic Development Commission has invited the members of the community and of course, members of the City Council to join the Commission from 4 to 6 p.m. on Tuesday, April 30th. That will be right here in this chambers, and we'll do a very, very comprehensive update which will dive into many different initiatives. There's a couple dozen, believe it or not, that we're actively working on, everything from economic inclusion activities to real estate development programs that we're very excited to present. And again, the public is invited right here in the City Council chambers. There's no RSVP for that event and no cost. With that, I will conclude my report about upcoming updates relative to the Economic Development Blueprint.
Thank you, and we'll take a few questions from the council. Any questions on the update? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Councilwoman Mungo.
I just want to thank you for working with all the commissioners. I know that each of them have taken a lot of ownership of different areas, and a lot of progress has been made. And so a big thank you to both your staff and the commissioners that have really worked hard on taking the ownership and making sure that we're consistently moving forward in each category.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on item number 2? Seeing none, members, please cast your vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 3, please.
Item 3 is a recommendation to receive and file a status update on non-retail type cannabis businesses and request staff to refer to the City Council within 30 days a report on the feasibility of the creation of a 24-month pilot program.
Thank you. And so the purpose of this committee is really to monitor our revenue streams in the city, and identify opportunities to expand our tax base. And so let's start with a conversation on a fairly new tax stream in the city, and that is a tax stream, revenue stream related to cannabis businesses. So, Mr. Keisler, let's start off with the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Richardson. This committee is really responsible for making recommendations to the City Council about how we can create more resources for things like parks and streets and public safety. And so we look a lot at property tax, sales tax, transient occupancy tax, bed tax for hotels, and other fees and revenues that we can leverage to grow resources. The cannabis market is growing as well, no pun intended, and represents sort of an emerging market. And so to present this report, I would like to introduce our cannabis officer for the city, Ajay Kalori, to provide a cannabis licensing update to the committee, and hopefully we can have a discussion about ways in which we can stimulate even more growth in this sector.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Economic Development and Finance Committee. My name, again, is Ajay Kaluri, and I work in the City Manager's Office helping to oversee our cannabis regulatory program. I'm going to give a presentation on cannabis business licensing in the City of Long Beach. To start, I want to provide a quick overview of the cannabis regulatory environment in Long Beach. In November 2016, Long Beach voters approved Measure MM, which authorized commercial medical cannabis activity in Long Beach. In August of 2018, the City Council adopted a separate ordinance to allow for commercial adult use cannabis activity. Currently, the city issues licenses for 5 different business types: retail businesses, which sell cannabis directly to consumers; cultivation facilities, which grow and harvest cannabis plants; manufacturing facilities, which extract essential oils from the plant and use that oil to create other types of consumer goods; distribution facilities, which warehouse and transport cannabis products; and then finally, laboratory testing facilities, which test cannabis goods for mold, pesticides, and other contaminants. Also in 2016, Long Beach voters approved Measure MA, which established business license tax rates for the cannabis industry. City Council has the authority to increase or decrease cannabis tax rates within the maximum and minimum rates set by voters. The maximum and minimum rates are identified on this slide. Currently, cannabis businesses are charged at a tax of 6% for medical retail sales, 8% for adult use retail sales, $12 per square foot plant canopy under cultivation, and 6% gross receipts for all other business types. This table shows cannabis tax revenues collected in FY18 and estimated for FY19. FY19 year-end projections are based on tax revenues collected through the first 6 months of this fiscal year. In total, the city collected $1.6 million in cannabis tax and fee revenues in FY18 and is estimated to collect $4.1 million in FY19. The year-over-year growth in revenues is driven primarily by the increase in the number of licensed businesses operating in the city, but it is also due in part to an uptick in retail sales following passage of the adult use ordinance. One trend worth noting is the ongoing underperformance of manufacturing and distribution business types in Long Beach. Manufacturers and distributors accounted for less than 1% of total cannabis revenues in FY18, and that trend has continued in FY19. To understand where the Long Beach cannabis market is headed, it's important to look not just at revenues, but also at the number of businesses moving through the application process. As of March 21st, 2019, the city has received a total of 821 cannabis business license applications. Of that amount, 66 licenses have been issued, 534 applications are pending, and 216 applications have been closed or deemed ineligible through the application review process. That is a lot of applications, but it is also somewhat misleading. First, staff expects that most, if not all, cannabis businesses will co-locate medical and adult use activity on the same site. Co-located businesses are required to apply for 2 separate business licenses, one for medical and another for adult use. Second, many cannabis businesses intend to vertically integrate their operation. For instance, a business may cultivate, manufacture, and distribute out of the same building. Vertically integrated businesses are also required to apply separately for each license type. To account for co-location and vertical integration, it's helpful to look at the total number of proposed cannabis facilities. Using this statistic, the city has a total of 244 proposed commercial cannabis facilities, most of which intend to house multiple license types. This table provides a breakdown of where the proposed cannabis facilities currently are in the application process. Of the 244 cannabis facilities, 33 are licensed to operate, an additional 54 are under construction, 67 are in building plan review, 75 are awaiting building plan submittal, and 15 are undergoing initial business license application review. Ultimately, it is difficult to predict how many of the 244 proposed facilities will receive a license to operate beyond the 33 that are already licensed. Over the last 2 years, staff has learned that the failure rate in the cannabis industry is high, and many businesses drop out of the application process before ever receiving a license. Generally speaking, however, businesses that are further along in the process, for instance in the construction or building plan review phase, are more likely to receive a license than businesses in the earlier stages of application review. The last slide I'd like to show is a comparison of tax rates in Long Beach relative to other large jurisdictions in the state. As you can see in the table, Long Beach remains competitive with the tax rates charged by other large cities, with one notable exception, and that is the city of Los Angeles. Los Angeles charges significantly lower rates for manufacturing, distribution, and lab testing. Thus far, Los Angeles tax rates have had a limited impact on business location decisions in Southern California due to the significant delays that the city of Los Angeles has experienced during the rollout of its cannabis licensing program. However, that is expected to change later this year with the opening of what they are calling Phase 3 of the Los Angeles licensing process. At that point, the discrepancy in tax rates between Los Angeles and Long Beach could begin to play a larger role in determining where cannabis businesses choose to locate in the Southern California region. That concludes my presentation, and I am available for questions.
Thank you. So, great presentation, a lot to digest, some initial thoughts, and then I want to hear from colleagues, and then I'll probably have some additional thoughts. So, I think you went through those slides pretty quickly. Do you have a hard copy of it? I can get a hand. Okay, great. Okay, so one thing that stood out was the different, the cannabis types. So it said 244 essentially open or in the pipeline, and 33 of those have already been issued a license. You said the application review and the pending plan submittal, we don't know if those are going to make it through, but it's a higher likelihood if the applications that are under construction or at the building plan review stage, those are more likely to proceed. So that's about 120. That's about 120 businesses in the pipeline with a chance to open, and 33 are already open. Do you have these numbers broken out by? So which of these are dispensaries and which ones are the non-dispensary, the non-retail type licenses? You have an idea what that is?
Yes, we have that breakdown. It's complicated because there are both medical and adult use license types, but I can provide a breakdown for just the medical, which is a pretty good representation of where we're at.
Sure.
So for licenses that have been issued, there are 16 dispensaries, 4 cultivators, 10 manufacturers, 6 distributors, and 2 testing laboratories. However, just because a license has been issued does not necessarily mean that the business is in operation yet. So that's why you see relatively low tax revenues for the manufacturing and distribution business types, because although we've issued licenses, they are, at least thus far, not operating.
I guess what I'd like to know is, it seemed to me, and you tell me if this is true, that the dispensaries opened up first, and these other businesses really haven't opened. I mean, for example, in my district, I can point to where the dispensaries are and where they're open. Couldn't tell you where I see the open manufacturing or lab testing or these others. So is a great majority of those 33 issued license, are those of the dispensary types?
Yes, it's majority dispensaries.
Majority dispensaries. And we have a cap on dispensaries in the city, correctly?
Yeah,
Correct.
we have a cap of 32 dispensaries citywide.
So if there's a cap on 32, and I see 120 applications in the pipeline, and would you say half of those 32 are already open? These how many dispensaries are open in the city?
Yes, half of the 32.
About half. So out of these 120, at max, you're talking 12 dispensaries. So the great majority of these are non-dispensaries. These are the non-dispensary type licenses. Is that correct?
That's correct. For active pending applications, the majority are non-dispensaries.
Okay. And the reason I bring that up is because I really think of it, there's a real line there in between between the dispensaries and the non-dispensary type businesses. In dealing with this issue for years, since, for see the same type of community sensitivity. If anything, we see a higher upside for jobs and economic opportunity there, and it appears that the manufacturing and distribution and cultivation sites really haven't taken off, and that seems like a great missed opportunity for sales tax or to generate revenue for our city. Is that an accurate description of the presentation that you just made? That these have taken off, these have not. Therefore, that's why you see that they only make up 1% of the tax revenue?
It's correct to say that there's greater potential for tax revenue for the non-dispensary business types if more of those business types open.
Great. So what I'll say is, the final point I make is that when we adopted the ordinance, we also adopted a cannabis equity program, and many of the benefits were tied not to the dispensaries, since really who those licenses were given to were really tied up in the process of the ballot measure, Measure M. And so all the opportunities for jobs and economic equity really rested in other license types, which really haven't taken off. I'd like to see that side of the business take off a bit more. And so I want to hear more from my colleagues, but what I'd like to see is us take a look at, the reasons why these things, these businesses haven't taken off. I've heard narratives about, inconsistencies in, you're requiring to open a window, to install windows in a warehouse facility. They install a window and then put a board behind the window because really don't need a window on a factory. But we're requiring these things, which really slow down the process. That's one. And then two, in looking at the table, comparing the taxes, it seems like many of these cities, they tax the retail differently than cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, lab testing. So it seems like Los Angeles has significantly less taxes, and I see that San Francisco has a lower tax structure as well. I don't want to touch retail right now, but for cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, lab testing, I'd like to evaluate, can we come up with a pilot program, a 24-month pilot that allows us to allow this industry to take root and grow, broaden the tax base by sort of streamlining our processes and lowering the tax structure. So that's what I'd like to see. But at this point, I want to hear more from our colleagues. Councilwoman Mungo.
Thank you. So I've also met with some of the individuals who are opening distribution and warehousing, and the barriers that you talk about with the windows are reality, and the requirements have been burdensome. However, the tax rate was not a barrier to what will likely be the largest facility in Southern California, which is opening up in my district. They're very eager to open. They're just having a very difficult time with the city process. And so what also is a big constraint, according to them, is locations available. And so since there's such a tight market in the industrial real estate availability and the cost per square foot, there hasn't been as many opportunities for these facilities. So when they found a facility as large as the one available in the 5th District, they jumped all over it. And I actually I'm going to follow up with another walkthrough. I talked through a second party on this, and they did a walkthrough about 4 weeks ago. But we really need to talk with development services and integrating our inspections. We need to talk about potentially even advocating at the state level for some changes to the requirements of the warehouses that are, there are current state requirements that are just antiquated and make no sense at all for the current, including but not limited to, some of these windows they're putting in are not cheap. And then just to cover them up after the purchase of the window, the installation of the window, all of these components, it's been quite frustrating for some of them. So I think the issue has been, and this was surprising to me, in some of these facilities take an exuberant amount of electricity. And so where the Southern California Edison vaults are and drawing lines and different types of power to these facilities has caused significant delays in terms of their ability to get power to the sites in the volumes that they anticipate needing. And so I'm interested in the cannabis office doing some research and meeting with those that are furthest along. I also feel like of the 244, maybe excluding the 90 that are in pending plan submittal or application review, above those 90, the 154 that are in the pipeline, I'd like to see a breakout of how many of those are distribution. I'd like to see and all the different cultivation, manufacturing, and lab testing, because that's a high number that I think if all of them make it through, and many big funders are behind these, I don't think that they're just waiting around. I think that we just need to make sure to pull down some of those barriers, because I think that those anticipated revenue numbers aren't going to be hit if we don't stop some of the getting in our own way for these different facilities.
Thank you. I think that's good feedback. So I think it's like a both and. So we see folks are in the pipeline. They want to invest here. They want to create jobs. For some reason, the process is slowing them down. And I want to give credence both to the tax structure as well. So as far as we can look at, what we have the legal ability to adjust, I think we take a both and approach. We come up with some options for council to consider, and we move forward. There's economic opportunity here. We have some goals in terms of tax revenue. Let's exceed them. That's the purpose of this committee. Councilman Uranga?
Thank you, and I'm really encouraged by the discussion that's taking place so far, because when I look at this, I look at what's our bottom line, and our bottom line is that we want to have a revenue stream that's coming from cannabis that's going to be very positive for the city. And from what I see here, and what's at slide 10, we're out of line to a great extent with what's taking place around us, especially when you're looking at our largest neighbor to the north in Los Angeles. And I could see why people are coming here and claiming, allegedly, whatever, that Long Beach is just too expensive to do business here. And this chart very clearly notes that we are a little expensive, and that would be part of the barriers that I see coming up in terms of being able to open up a business here. And we have all these different categories that we're going under, and we have approximately 200 or so businesses waiting in line to open up. So I'm looking at how we started this conversation in terms of getting into a pilot program. Mm-hmm. I think that would be the most beneficial way at this point to get something started, to get the jump start anyway for Long Beach in regards to what is our full potential in regards to cannabis and getting a revenue stream that is going to be workable for us. So I'm encouraged by that, and I would very strongly encourage a pilot program. If you require a motion at this point, I'd be more than happy to make it. But
so there's a motion queued up. If you want to just second it, just hit the button.
There it is.
There you go. Okay, does that conclude your comments?
That pretty much is it.
Okay, so John, I think the motion here captures much of the discussion here. I think we need to take a look at some of the barriers as well as the tax structure. and then bring those to council so that we can bring some framework to council so the full council can initiate a pilot program. We want to stay away from the retail types. I think that opens a whole can of worms. I think we limit to the stuff that has low impact, high opportunity, high economic impact, low environmental, low sort of community impact. That's where we want to go. We're going to do public comment. We have another committee meeting come up, so I'm going to limit public comment to 90 seconds. So public comment, if you want to come up, now's the time. Just give us your name and your testimony.
Stefan Borsensulo, District 2.
I only see 2 people, so you can go ahead and do your full 3 minutes.
Oh, cool. All right. Good afternoon. Measure MM gave a local monopoly to the businesses that you see here in this audience based on strict adherence with regulatory standards, including unionized workforce, mandatory laboratory testing, and no sales to minors. The businesses here have abided by these standards. However, thanks to outdated tax policies, they are suffering from a competitive disadvantage compared to illicit actors who have no qualms in paying people under the table to sell dirty weed to anybody with a cell phone. Measure MA reflected an overly optimistic view based solely on revenue connection, which is important, but it's not the only factor to consider when designing this sort of policy. Future tax policy must be designed with the intent of capturing existing customers who are currently in the city of Long Beach being served by unlicensed actors, which outnumber us about 1 to 10. In my opinion, this requires a local tax with a low floor, somewhere around 0.5%, and a high ceiling at the current 6%, with just the rate delegated to the council on an annualized basis so they can meet market demands. This sort of tax could act in an analogous manner to tobacco taxes in the city of San Francisco, or our own evaluation, which we do with the Tideland funds. This is actually similar to the LBCA's proposal back in 2016, when MA was first performed. Councilman Richardson, you also asked for other policy reasons why these businesses are not succeeding. For this, I really think it would be an appropriate venue to refer this to the Public Safety Committee. The success of this industry requires the elimination of the illicit market. Existing ordinances make the distinction between legal and illegal very clear, and only what is missing is the will within the city's police department to enforce it. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
And good afternoon. I'm here to I designed a speech in which about the economic blueprint, but the thing I wanted to propose, I think we should be using the cannabis taxes on this plan. Here we have an economic development committee. What I propose is this: leave the driving to us. Just bear with me for 1 second. The Long Beach Transit brings in about $15 million a year from ridership fares, and yet it has an $85 million budget. The majority of Long Beach Transit's budget comes from outside state budgets. So really, it doesn't rely on fares. Hold on. So, I mean, bear with me. So, in the proposed blueprint, you say that 77% of the people in Long Beach have a job outside of Long Beach. And that's pretty consistent with the National Transportation Safety Board 2012-2016 report on transportation.
I'm not seeing how this is connected to the
you have to
item.
wait 1 minute. I'm going to wrap it up. So 80% of a car usage is used for commuting. But of the 20% that's left over, 40% is used for traveling around the city within a 1 mile radius. Now, I want to say that the way that we can look at this small percentage of the 40% that's used within traveling around the city, we could change our city if we made Long Beach Transit free. If we made Long Beach Transit free, that $15 million that replaces the fares, we could, as a city, indeed make Long Beach Transit free, which would be a huge thing for us. And
Thank you, but this is not connected to the subject matter. It's inappropriate.
Okay. Here.
So if you can make the connection now, otherwise you have to wait until there's another public comment at the end of the meeting.
If you're going to take money and make everybody stone on the street and stone behind the cars, you have to look at public safety. And how do you get people from behind the wheel while driving around? You have to make opportunities that they don't get behind the car. As you look for revenues and you're going, you have to give people opportunity to not get behind the wheel. What I'm trying to point out as an economic chair, that we have the public transit system, that I'm off speech now if you'll let me finish up, that we have that this economic committee has an opportunity to find a way to make sure that there's safety along with collecting taxes. Now, I really resent being interrupted because I could have tried this all together, and I am allowed my 3 minutes of speech, even though you want to block it. But I'm no fool, and I'm going to say, I ran for city council, I ran for mayor. I gathered $800, and I got 8,300 votes. Your Lena Gonzalez got $250,000, she got 8,700 votes, and twice the population. I'm no fool. And to interrupt me like this, Mr. Richardson, is rude and against my freedom of speech. Put people stone on the streets. Put people stone on the streets while you collect the taxes.
Sir, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Very good. As I've expressed many times, I view this cannabis and those that deal in it as one step above, a very small step above, sex trafficking, period. If this city has to rely on revenues from this dynamic, its leaders should resign, and resign now. It comes as no surprise that my sense is one of the staunchest supporters of it comes from the enclave up there in the Neanderthal land of our city. We hopefully have people in this city in leadership positions that had the intelligence, the fortitude, and the will to meet the needs of this city, which are not small. And we face tough times. And that's to a very large extent because of the criminal capacity, the criminal tendencies of our mayor, soon to be arrested in prison and so forth. And that will happen. But in order to turn and to meet the financial needs of this city, we need intelligent leadership that aren't potheads or support potheads. Thank you.
Thank you. And with this, just got in line is our last speaker here. So, sir, you have the floor.
My name's Matt Bell. I'm Executive Vice President of UFCW Local 324, and we represent the cannabis workers here in Long Beach proudly. They brought good jobs to the community, living wage jobs with health care and pension. But I think it's great to have this discussion because these jobs have been in the retail sector. And it would be great to see these other license types prosper. This is where a large amount of jobs, that local jobs, can be created. We spent a lot of time talking about social equity and looking how these ordinances were passed. And I understand a lot of this was done in the dark and is new, and that's how these tax structures were created. But I think this is a good time to go back and look not only at the numbers, but how the taxes are actually processed, as well as the other things that are affecting these licenses. Because the whole intent of this was to create good jobs here in the city of Long Beach for the residents of Long Beach. And to come back and to discuss this, I think, is a great move. I think everyone here in this room wants to see these jobs, and to be able to make them unionized jobs and living wage jobs is what everybody wants. So I applaud this committee to move this forward, and look forward to seeing it at council. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Jackie Hernandez. I am a member of the LBCA. Also, I am a manager of Leaf and Lion. I know we're not supposed to discuss the retail cannabis tax, but I do want to mention, being a manager, I've noticed a lot of the customers coming in complaining about how high the taxes are, and also mentioning how they're shopping in the illicit markets because of it. So it might be something that we want to discuss in a later date. It is also good to bring in a lot of these other licenses and try to help the taxes for them, but it's really important to look at the retail side. There's patients, I'm a patient myself, I have 2 different neurological disorders where I rely on cannabis use. To see the patients coming in, not knowing the difference between the illicit market and the legal market, and they're shopping within the illicit market, when they do come into a legal market, they do notice the price change, and they complain, and it's just basically opening up the roads for more and more black market shopping, and also for more patients not getting medicine that they deserve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So, members, please cast your vote.
Councilmember, I queued up.
I didn't see
Sorry,
you were clued
no
up
problem.
twice. Go for it.
I'm actually really glad that someone brought up the enforcement side of this. I mean, I feel like that is actually the bigger barrier for all of our cannabis retailers. I feel like it also impacts on a secondary level the manufacturing and compliance. I'd like to add to the motion a friendly amendment that we see the tax rates by jurisdiction for all cities in LA County. I see right now that one city in Orange County is at similar rates to us, and the other city is not, and that's only 2. And so I just don't know what the picture is. I also think that some of the real estate issues, the biggest barriers to entry really are the cost of real estate. So I look forward to seeing kind of like an analysis on that included if possible.
So you want to see a more full picture?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's fine, totally. Great. Members, please cast your vote.
Thanks.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. So before we adjourn, we have one more public comment for anything that wasn't on the agenda. Any public comment for the committee? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to get ready for our Budget Oversight Committee meeting.